Welcome again, everybody. Scott Hall here, going to do another voice. This time it's a old professor, one that sounds like he was probably alive and good friends with Benjamin Franklin back in the day, and possibly about the same age as well. But he's going to be talking to a class reading, this time still doing Edgar Allan Poe, and from the end of the story, Hopfrog. I always liked this story in high school, but he's going to take the story up from when Hopfrog has already just about ready to gather his 8 orangutans that he has dressed up, and to continue the gag. Obviously, the ones who are dressed up don't quite know the gag, but Hopfrog's about to let the entire masquerade, the entire party in on it. And, of course, remember that it will be read in the voice of an old professor who might have been just about 130 years old when this story was written. So, yes, seen a lot come through, but trying to read to these students and hope that maybe they can get some joy out of this old classic story. So here we go, class. Gonna read from the end of Hopfrog by Edgar Allan Poe. Soon after this, the king and his 7 friends, having reeled about the hall in all directions, found themselves at length in its center, and of course in immediate contact with the chain. While they were thus situated, the dwarf, who had followed noiselessly at their heels, incited them to keep up the commotion, took hold of their own chain at the intersection of the 2 portions which crossed the circle diametrically and at right angles. Here, with the rapidity of thought, he inserted the hook from which the chandelier had been wont to depend, and in an instant, by some unseen agency, the chandelier chain was drawn so far upward as to take the hook out of reach, and, as an inevitable consequence, to drag the orangutans together in close connection and face to face. The masqueraders by this time had recovered in some measure from their alarm, and beginning to regard the whole matter as a well-contrived pleasantry, set up a loud shout of laughter at the predicament of the apes. "Leave them to me!" now screamed Hopfrog, his shrill voice making itself easily heard through the din. "Leave them to me! I fancy I know them. If I can only get a good look at them, I can soon tell who they are." Here, scrambling over the heads of the crowd, he managed to get to the wall, when, seizing a flambeau from one of the caryatides, he returned. "What's that? Caryatides? Oh, just googly it later. You'll find out what that word means. Just, yes, you see how it's spelled. You can googly that later. It's googly, right? Yes, googly. It's got Goog with the L-E at the googly. You can googly that later and find out what it is. We're going to keep reading, okay? He returned to Caryatides. He returned as he went to the center of the room, leaped with the agility of a monkey upon the king's head, and thence clambered a few feet up the chain, holding down the torch to examine the group of orangutans, and still screaming, "I shall soon find out who they are." And now, while the whole assembly, the apes included, were convulsed with laughter, the jester suddenly uttered a shrill whistle, when the chain flew violently upward for about 30 feet, dragging with it the dismayed and struggling orangutans, and leaving them suspended in mid-air between the skylight and the floor. Hopfrog, clinging to the chain as it rose, still maintained his relative position in respect to the 8 maskers, and still, as if nothing were the matter, continued to thrust his torch down toward them, as though endeavoring to discover who they were. So thoroughly astonished was the whole company at this ascent, that a dead silence of about a minute's duration ensued. It was broken by just such a low, harsh, grating sound as had before attracted the attention of the king and his counselors, from which the former threw the wine in the face of Trippetta. But on the present occasion there could be no question as to whence the sound issued. It came from the fang-like teeth of the dwarf, who ground them and gnashed them as he foamed at the mouth. Ooh, that sounds terrible. And glared with an expression of maniacal rage into the upturned countenances of the king and his 7 companions. "Aha!" said at length the infuriated jester. "Aha! I begin to see who these people are now." Here, pretending to scrutinize the king more closely, he held the flambeau to the flaxen coat which enveloped him, and which instantly burst into a sheet of vivid flame. In less than half a minute the whole 8 orangutans were blazing fiercely, oh my goodness, amid the shrieks of the multitude who gazed at them from below, horror-stricken and without the power to render them the slightest assistance. At length the flames, suddenly increasing in virulence, forced the jester to climb higher up the chain to be out of their reach, and as he made this movement the crowd again sank, for a brief instant, into silence. The dwarf seized his opportunity and once more spoke. "I now see distinctly," he said, "what manner of people these maskers are. They are a great king and his 7 privy councillors, a king who does not scruple to strike a defenceless girl, and his 7 councillors who abet him in the outrage. As for myself, I am simply Hopfrog, the jester, and this is my last jest." Owing to the high combustibility of both the flax and the tar to which it adhered, the dwarf had scarcely made an end to his brief speech before the work of vengeance was complete. The 8 corpses swung in their chains, a fetid, blackened, hideous, and indistinguishable mass. Oh, that's going to make quite a mess when it comes down. The cripple hurled his torch at them, clambered leisurely to the ceiling, and disappeared through the skylight. Wish I could still climb like that. It's been quite a while since I could do a whole lot that active. And it's supposed that Trippetta, stationed on the roof of the saloon, had been the accomplice of her friend in his fiery revenge, and that together they effected their escape to their own country, for neither was seen again. Hopfrog by Edgar Allan Poe. There. A little bit of an old professor there for you, so hope you enjoy that one. I'll have another one coming up soon, too, that's a little bit of a devilish feel to it, so always enjoy that. So hope you enjoyed second reading, that time with an old professor reading Edgar Allan Poe, Hopfrog.